Okay, so let's dive in and start talking about what I found, what the actual surprises were. And there's 8 subjects, and for women only, we're only going to be able to get a chance to go through 3, maybe 4 of them, depending on how quickly I talk. And honestly, get your pen out, write notes on that thing. If you want to capture stuff, because there is going to be some surprises that you want to capture or you're going to lose them, because it is different than what we've heard before. Okay, so first, most important thing is a context overall about just how different men and women are. Rather than any one subject, the first thing you need to know is this big, unseen difference that rises up to the surface in some moments, and we don't know what's going on. So let me tell you this story real quickly. So when we were doing the survey for one of the other books I didn't bring up with me, for parents only, over there on the table, for parents only, was the study to help parents understand their kids. And so we were surveying and studying guys and girls at the same time, instead of all of my other studies at that point had been only of men for a couple of years or only of women. But suddenly I'm talking to these high school and college age people at the same time, and these differences were shining out like a spotlight. And something happened that to me just captures this. We were in a focus group room where one night I was doing a focus group of young men, and then the next night I was doing a focus group of young women. And these were mostly college age. There was a few high school, mostly college age. And we were talking about, okay, let's talk about, like in the group with the guys, let's talk about what is it that you're most worried about? Like, what feels the worst to you? What most hurts you? And what do you most need? What most lights you up? What's the thing that sort of gives you joy of life every day? You know, trying to nail down those things. And as we were in this room, have you guys ever seen those conference rooms, by the way, where there's like whiteboards on the walls with those doors that shut? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so picture this conference room with 2 whiteboards on 2 opposite walls, and they have doors that shut. So I'm doing this first night with the guys. What are they most worried about? What do they most need? And I'm writing on this whiteboard, and then I realized, oh my gosh, we're out of time, gotta go, don't have time to erase it, so I just shut the doors. The next night, I was in that same room with a group of mostly college-age girls, some high school, mostly college-age, and so I open this whiteboard and I say, okay, let's start talking about what are your needs as girls? What are you most worried about? Like, what hurts the most? And this one young woman raised her hand, and she said, excuse me, I object to this language. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, it's not our fears and our needs as girls. I mean, we're all just people. And we all have the same needs and worries and fears as people. And I said, okay, that's fine. Let's talk about your fears and your needs as people. And so I started writing, and they talked, for 2 hours, and we had this great conversation, and I finished charting. We got it all down. And then I said, do you girls want to see what the boys said yesterday? And of course, all the girls are like, yeah. So I opened these doors, and I stood back, and I watched as these girls went, because there was not one word the same. Not one. Except for like maybe the. Okay. Not one word the same. And that got across. I mean, I'd seen it, but that got across just how radically different we are. And we stumble over those differences without realizing it. So, what was on the board? So let's talk about the differences between men and women in terms of our primary needs, okay? So for us as women, for starting as girls, like on the board, and then later as we grow into adulthood, for us as women, it's all about, am I lovable? Am I beautiful? Am I special? Am I worthy of being loved for who I am on the inside? And so we need to feel loved and cherished and adored, and like this man in our life just absolutely loves us, okay? Because it's all about, am I worthy of being loved for who I am on the inside, okay? The guys, and later, the adult men, they're like, like, yeah, that's nice, that's important, but it didn't make it on the board, okay? For the guys, it's a totally different. It's, am I able? Am I adequate? Am I any good at what I do on the outside? Totally, completely different. So where we women most need to feel loved and cherished and adored, and that's what lights us up, and that's kind of what we think is the whole point of having the relationship to begin with, right? Like, if you're not going to feel loved, what's the point? And it's a huge surprise for us to find out that for men, that's not the point at all. And that if they had to make a choice, and now this is what shocked me, okay? If they had to make a choice, which they wouldn't want to have to make this choice, but if they had to, they would actually choose to give up feeling that their wife or their girlfriend loved them if they could just feel that she respected them. And I'm seeing some blank faces, so let me say that one more time. And I'm going to put this in personal terms, if you don't mind. What this means is that your husband or your boyfriend, if he's like most other men and he had to make a choice, he would actually choose to give up feeling that you love him. If he could just feel that you respect him and you trust him and you believe in him and you admire him and you appreciate him, and all of those things are more important to the average man even than feeling that you love him. That is a huge difference between men and women. And it gets us as women into so much trouble because we women are really good at showing love. Okay? Think about the irony of that, okay? We naturally say, I love you, right? It just sort of comes out of us. I love you, and we do all these loving things. And at the same time, without realizing it, maybe we're criticizing him a lot. Or we're questioning his decisions all the time. Or maybe we're teasing him in public about, you tried to fix the plumbing, you couldn't fix the plumbing to save his life, or whatever, And we're doing these things that for us, we're like, yeah, whatever. But for him, it's this, she doesn't respect me. She doesn't think I'm any good at what I do on the outside. And it's so painful. And we have no idea that that is going on in his heart. We have no idea how painful that is, or that pain is legitimate, like we were just saying. It's the way that men are wired, just like there's a way that women are wired. So we have to understand that and what it looks like. Now, here's the thing. This is really where we get into trouble, okay? Because I think most of us as women, we generally, not in every case, but we generally do respect the man in our life, right? We generally do appreciate him. And we have no idea that we're sending him the message that we don't. And we have no idea that sometimes our assumptions and our thoughts, he's reading stuff into it, and we're like, but I didn't intend to send that message. But he's actually capturing a little germ of something that actually is there underneath the surface. For example, how many of us have ever thought to ourselves or said out loud, what was he thinking? Okay, we all know, most of us have said that or thought that. Okay, here's the translation of that. Okay, you ready? The translation of that is, he wasn't thinking. That's the translation. That's what that means. Now, here's one of the other surprises in the books. One of the other things that I learned. Guys think about everything. They just do it differently than we do. Because if we're thinking about something, you know about it, right? Because we women are verbal processors. That's literally, there's a brain science difference here, that we think things through while we're talking them through. That actively helps most women, not all, but in most cases, that helps us think things through. That's the way our brain is wired. Guys are exactly the opposite. It is incredibly difficult and uncomfortable for a guy to think something through while he's talking it through, especially if it's a big emotional issue. And instead, he goes underground. It's really fascinating when I ask the guys to sort of explain, like, help me see how you go through this process. Because here's what they said. They said it sort of feels like this internal chess match. And they're doing this thing of, okay, well, if I do this, then this has to have happened over here. But if I do that, then this thing has to have happened before. And they do this internal chess match, sometimes for days, and it pops out the other end as a decision. And if we don't know this, he says, I think we should do this. And you say, well, I don't know, what about this thing over here? And he's thinking, I just spent 3 days thinking about this. We didn't know, okay? But I realized that sometimes there is actually an assumption underneath, like, what was he thinking? Because that was a really boneheaded move, okay? Now, let's back up a minute before I sort of give an example of this and explain why this bothers them so much. Okay, let's nail this down, because this is another one of the things that I covered in the book that is so difficult for us to realize or believe. I think most of us have a hard time believing this one. It turns out there is a huge difference between how men look on the outside and how they feel about themselves on the inside. See, men look so confident, and we sometimes think, you know, he looks a little too confident in himself. He could be taken down a peg or two. Okay? And on the inside, what I heard from almost every guy I talked to was totally different. On the inside, here's the internal feeling of a man. All day, every day. This is literally running, as one guy said, this is running through my veins. I'm never without it. The way they described it is this internal feeling of, I want to tackle a challenge. I want to do great things. I want to be a great husband, or a great boyfriend, or I want to be a wonderful father, or I want to be a great businessman, or a great pastor, or whatever, right? Okay, so I want to do great things, but I'm really not sure I know exactly what I'm doing, and I hope nobody finds out. And what happens is, underneath the surface, there's this enormous self-doubt and this enormous vulnerability that we don't even know is there. And it's like a raw nerve, and you can hit that nerve without having any idea that that's what you're doing. And certainly without, in most of the cases, without intending to. So here's an example of one of the things that will hit that nerve. For example, when one man said, anytime, and he sort of gave me a rule, this kind of cracked me up. He said, anytime a woman starts a sentence with, why did you, ... you know, why did you make this decision? Why did we do it this way? If you're in a business meeting, why did you choose that pricing, Bob? He may be answering you just normally. On the inside, it's like, oh, she doesn't think that I know what I'm doing. And the reason is because they think they're not sure they know what they're doing. Because remember, we think male ego, and we don't realize, no, there is no male ego. What it is male self-doubt underneath the surface, and it's being triggered, and it hurts. Remember the whiteboards? The deepest heart cry of a man is, am I able? Am I adequate? I want to be good at what I do on the outside, but am I? If the heart cry of a woman is, am I lovable? The heart cry of a man is, do I measure up? And he's looking to the people around him, especially you, for the answer to that question. And that is where we can be sending a signal that, no, you don't measure up. And we have no intention of sending it. And it's so important for us to realize, you know what? It's not that they have this inflated view of themselves and we're just bringing them down to ground level. No. It's underneath the surface. They're starting below ground level.